On December the 13th, 2022, the small town of Moscow, Idaho, would be shaken by the brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students. Ethan Chapin, 20, Madison Mogen, 21, Xana Kernodle, 20, and Kaylee Goncalves, 21, were found murdered in an off-campus rental home. Of the 6 people in the home that night, 2 would miraculously survive, unharmed. Moscow, Idaho has a population of around 25,000 people, a small town with a low crime rate. In fact, so low that the town hasn't seen a single murder since 2015. Moscow boasts the expansive Idaho University campus and thrives on the business the student population provides the town. The university ranks as the 15th safest university in the USA. With nearby Washington State University campus just 10 miles away, Moscow has quite the lucrative student property market. Idaho students Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funke all resided at a student house situated in a residential area of Moscow. They were all good friends, acclimated with sororities and enjoying student life to the full. Kaylee was a senior, majoring in general studies. Her goal was to become an elementary school teacher. Maddie was a senior major in marketing, and Xana was a junior, also majoring in marketing. Maddie and Kaylee were childhood friends. Both Idaho natives, they met at middle school where their friendship was forged. They would graduate from Lake City High School before both applying for the Idaho University. Xana was an Idaho native, graduated from Post Falls High School, and Ethan, a triplet, attended Mount Vernon High School before applying for Idaho University along with his siblings. It is here we'd meet Xana, and the pair began dating. The group welcomed the social side of college and immersed themselves in the party scene of student life, hosting parties at their home in Moscow, sometimes to the despair of the neighbours. Moscow police made several visits to the house over the summer of 2022 to deal with noise complaints.
And I assume noise.
Noise, yeah.
Yeah.
Big speaker right there.
Yeah.
Nothing against having a party. Once neighbors start calling in, then we have an issue.
Fair.
You go to school?
Yeah.
Okay. What year?
Senior.
Senior. Okay. So I'll tell you the same thing I told them. You probably know the drill, right?
Actually, no.
Oh, okay. So usually, at least for me, I'll give you a verbal warning.
Okay.
Once I have neighbors calling in, your music's too loud, you're disturbing the peace.
Yeah.
Nothing against having parties, nothing against having people over who are overage to drink. But again, once we start disturbing the neighbors, then we've got an issue.
Yeah.
Noise ticket is up to $300. Okay, it's a pretty expensive ticket. I don't want to give that to you. That being said, this is your place, so I'm going to hold you responsible.
She is at the club. She's 21. I'm just going to bed. I have a couple friends over, but this is my ID.
Have you talked to Maddie tonight?
Yes, I have. Well, she's at the corner club.
Okay. Did she tell you anything about anything that happened earlier or anything like that?
Honestly, not really. I've just been here. Okay, yeah.
But this is the second noise complaint we've had here tonight within 2 hours.
I'm sorry
okay?
about that.
So this time it was the blonde gal and the guy on the back porch.
I'm just going.
Okay. Well, understand that you're responsible for the residents. Okay. So whoever else is here, if they have a safe way to get home, you need to kick them out. Okay. Or tell them to come inside and be quiet. Okay. Because the houses that are on this hill all the way around here, we can hear you from clear down the road when we were coming up here. We can hear the music.
Okay.
And that's...
I'm so sorry.
We're past the point of having polite conversations, okay?
Moscow police have become accustomed to dealing with noisy frat parties and drunken disorderly students. Maddie, Kaylee, Xana and Ethan were just typical students, all achieving good grades and enjoying their time together, making what happened to them truly terrifying. Saturday, the 12th of November 2022, the student household all had plans for the evening. Xana and Ethan were attending a party with Ethan's fraternity, Sigma Chi. Ethan lived at the Sigma Chi house, would often stay over with Xana at the student house. Dylan and Bethany were going out. Bethany would confirm seeing Ethan and Xana around 8 p.m. at the Sigma Chi party, and Kaylee and Maddie were going to a local bar known as the Corner Club. Dylan and Bethany would be the first back home that evening, arriving around 1 a.m. Xana and Ethan arrived around 1:45 a.m. Kaylee and Maddie left the Corner Club around 1:30 a.m. and made their way to a food truck nearby, known as the Grub Truck. The owner live streams from the truck on a Twitch channel. Unbeknown to them, this footage would be crucial in tracing Kaylee and Maddie's steps that evening, and tragically become the last footage of them seen alive. They order food and interact with fellow patrons as they wait for their order. They would then be seen leaving, getting a pre-arranged ride home. They are estimated to have arrived back to the house around 1:55 a.m. without incident. Kaylee and Maddie would bunk in the same bed in Maddie's room, as Kaylee's dog Murphy was in Kaylee's room. Ethan and Xana were in Xana's room, and Dylan and Bethany were in their own rooms. The home they rented had been converted to accommodate students. The home spanned 3 stories, with 2 bedrooms on the first floor with a front door, the second floor with stairway access from the first floor that led to the main lounge area, with 2 bedrooms located on that level and a kitchen area with a sliding door that led to a decking area. It's unclear which point of entry the students used to re-enter the home that night. A stairway from the kitchen leads to the 3rd floor, where there were 2 bedrooms and a double sliding door leading to a 3rd floor balcony area. Bethany resided on the 1st floor. Xana occupied the bedroom on the 2nd floor adjoining the lounge area, and Dylan's room was adjacent to the kitchen, and Kaylee and Maddie had the 3rd level rooms, Kaylee's room with the balcony access. The house sits amongst a populated street with apartment blocks adjacent to the home in a busy residential area. There is a car park behind the property. Within just hours of arriving home, 4 members of the household would be brutally murdered without disturbing a single neighbour. Each victim stabbed violently with a military-style K-bar knife, with wounds so severe that medical intervention would have been futile. It wouldn't be until nearly midday the next day that Moscow police would respond to a 911 call from the property, the caller claiming concerns for an unconscious housemate. When officers arrive, they soon come across the horrific and violent murders. It's unclear how the 911 caller determined a housemate was unconscious. The details of this 911 call have not been made public. However, a rumour is circulating that the unconscious housemate was in fact Dylan, who was in a state of shock and fainted at the property. When detectives arrive on the scene, they must begin the daunting task of processing the gruesome scene. Upon entering the property, they find Ethan's body in Xana's bed. Xana's body is found on the floor of her bedroom. When they access the 3rd floor, they find both Kaylee and Maddie murdered in the bed in which they slept. This is a crime Moscow hasn't encountered before, a violent mass murder without a clear motive. As detectives begin to investigate, they devise a timeline that shows these students were all out at separate places, so why would they be murdered within mere hours of arriving home? Ethan had been stabbed in Xana's bed, but Xana was found on the floor. Xana had ordered and received a DoorDash delivery at 4 a.m. This suggests that Xana was up and about. Her phone data shows she accessed TikTok at 4:12 a.m. According to Xana's father, she had defensive wounds. It appears Xana may have encountered the assailant and fought for her life. Kaylee and Maddie were killed where they slept in Maddie's single bed. Kaylee had been making calls on her cell phone until 2:52 a.m. Both girls sustained deep knife wounds, with Kaylee's father saying Kaylee's injuries were more severe. The killer travelled between 2 floors to murder 4 victims and left the 2 other housemates alone. The most shocking piece of evidence would be Dylan's statement. She heard several noises that night. First, she heard a noise above her that woke her up around 4 a.m. and presumed Kaylee was playing with her dog, Murphy. Then shortly after claims to have heard Kaylee's voice saying, "Someone's here." She looked out of her bedroom door but did not see anything. She then thought she heard someone crying coming from Xana's room and once again opened a door. She then heard what was a male voice saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." She then opened her door again, and this time she witnessed a male walking past her. She described him as around 5'10", of athletic build, wearing black clothes and a black face mask that covered his mouth and nose. She noted he had bushy eyebrows. She described being frozen in fear as he strolled past and left the property via the second floor sliding doors in the kitchen. There were no signs of forced entry. It's believed these doors may have been left unlocked. This interaction gives a time frame of the murders occurring sometime between 4:05 a.m. and 4:25, but it's equally puzzling as to why this person walked past Dylan despite taking a great risk being seen by her, and why Dylan didn't call 911 or go check on the other housemates until nearly lunchtime the following day. Interestingly, the remaining housemates had called friends over prior to calling 911. Dylan's bedroom sits directly between the stairway to the third floor and the living room. For Dylan to have seen the killer walk past, they would have to have been travelling from the lounge area, which was where Xana's room was located, meaning that Kaylee and Maddie were most likely murdered first before Ethan and Xana. A bloody footprint was found outside of Dylan's door, bearing a pattern tread similar to a Vans style shoe. A nearby camera picked up audio at 4:17 a.m, which appears to relay the sound of a thud followed by a dog barking intermittently. There is also the perplexing offender behaviour. For example, say this was a targeted attack for either Maddie or Kaylee. The fact they both slept in the same bed that night would explain why both were murdered if one was the intended target. The offender would have no option but to murder both to evade being identified. The location of their room meant the offender had a clear path of escape via a staircase and out through the kitchen door without having to interact with any other of the other student rooms. This suggests that Xana may have accidentally interrupted the killer. Having collected the DoorDash food, did she interact with the killer as he was attempting to leave the scene? Was this the sound Dylan heard? Xana's cries as she was pleading with the killer as he chased her to her room.
As investigators search for a suspect and the murder weapon in the vicious killings of 4 college students in Moscow, Idaho, those who knew and loved them are struggling with a sudden loss.
My heart is broken for all 4 of the victims and for their families and close friends.
Detectives had little to go on, or so it seemed. For weeks, as the media swarmed on the town of Moscow, the parents of the victims began to express their despair as they feared this killer was untraceable.
He straightened their eyes. The lead detective looked me in his eyes. I have no doubt he's working as hard as he can, but somebody isn't communicating. There's nothing being released. It seems like they're trying to suppress the story. We want to put rewards out. They're like, don't do that. Yeah, I get it. Your town doesn't want to have reward posters posted all over when you come and you do your rush. You're not going to get a lot of students if they see those things. But this community is not going to heal until this guy's pulled off the streets. It ain't going to happen. Think it through. It's not going to happen. He has to be off the streets. We all are working for the same thing.
Students began to leave campus to go back to their family homes, fearing they too could be targets. Online classes were arranged and the community of Moscow were left in a state of shock. Moscow police called for the assistance from the FBI. The key part of this investigation would rely on some great detective work. With Moscow being a low-crime area, a majority of homes don't have the need for extra security, so finding any CCTV footage was slim, but fortunately a neighbour had a camera that provided a snapshot of a white car driving past the home 4 times that evening, with the last sighting at 4:20 a.m. Without an identifiable licence plate, the FBI were able to determine that the vehicle was a white Nissan Elantra 2011 to 2014. It was going to be a huge task to sift through every owner of a white Nissan Elantra in the area, but not impossible. Not only did they have a vehicle, but a small sample of DNA was found at the crime scene. The killer had left the knife sheath next to Maddie's body. A trace amount of DNA was on the button of the clasp on the sheath. A white Nissan Elantra had been the subject of a traffic stop in the area of the student house prior on the 21st of August 2022. The driver was required to give his contact details, including a cell number, and this will provide detectives with a potential suspect. 28-year-old Washington State University student Brian Christopher Kohberger. Kohberger had no previous criminal history. A Pennsylvania native, he was in his first semester of a PhD in criminal justice and criminology. His apartment, located at the WSU campus, was just 10 miles from the Moscow student house. At 6 feet tall and slim build, he matched the description provided by Dylan, even down to the bushy eyebrows. His cell phone data showed he had pinged in the location of the Moscow home 12 times since August. Pings were either late in the evening or early in the morning. The night of the murders, his cell phone was turned off. He travelled back to his apartment around 5 a.m, then returned to Moscow around 9 a.m. and drove past the home. A common offender trait is to return to the scene of the crime. He was then spotted at an Albertsons grocery store in Clarkston, purchasing items at 12:45 p.m. that day. He then resumed his studies at WSU until the Christmas holidays. A month after the crime, Kohberger's father travels by plane from Pennsylvania to visit Kohberger at WSU. The father and son then proceed to take a road trip back to Pennsylvania for the Christmas holidays. Kohberger is stopped by officers on the Indiana Highway for tailgating a vehicle and then allowed to proceed on his journey. Law enforcement begin a special operation to follow him once he reaches his family home in Pennsylvania.
Driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on that van, man. He was right up on the back end of that van. Pulled you over for tailgating. Is this your car? Okay, cool. Where are you headed?
Well, we're coming from WSU, and we're standing early.
What's WSU?
Yeah, I go to the university basically. That is SWAT team area.
So we're, okay, I'm having a hard time hearing you because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University?
Yeah.
And you're going where? Oh.
We're going to be going to Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We're slightly punchy because we're driving for hours.
Hours, days.
Hours to drive. Well, that's almost a day.
Okay. And what did you say about some SWAT team thing? Or
yeah, there was a mass shooting and everything.
Where? Interesting.
Well, it's horrifying because he's supposed to be university, you know what I mean?
So y'all work at the university there?
I actually do work there.
Oh.
PhD in criminal.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't heard about that incident. Just yesterday, or?
No, this happened this morning. About an hour and a half ago, they're still wrapping it up for investigating. I'm not sure there's two shootings because they did shoot somebody.
I see.
And then we don't know about that actually. They were there with shooting.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. So do me a favor, don't follow too close, okay?
Oh.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate you.
They're able to covertly retrieve trash from the family home to search for DNA. A sample confirms that Kohberger's DNA is a match to the ninth chief. He's arrested by SWAT and taken into custody at Monroe County. Kohberger maintains he's innocent and he agrees to be extradited to Moscow to defend the charges. He has been appointed a public defender and tailor. He's denied bail and he'll be held in custody pending a scheduled hearing in June 2023. Little is known about Kohberger. He doesn't appear to be very active on social media. His relationship status is unknown. All that has been confirmed is that he's been attending classes as a PhD student and interacting with students as a TA. He's the youngest of 3 children, he has 2 older sisters and his parents are still married. He graduated from Pleasant Valley High School in 2013, would then take a job at the same high school as a security guard before going on to complete a degree in psychology at Pennsylvania's Northampton Community College. He then attended DeSales University, gaining a master's in criminal justice. His scholarly skills were deemed that impressive that he actually received a recommendation for the PhD course by DeSales professor Michelle Bolger. Neighbours of Kohberger describe him as friendly and talkative. The vital question that looms is, what was his motive? Cameras spotted his vehicle leaving his WSU apartment and heading towards a Moscow home after 3 AM on the night of the murders. How did he know who'd be home at that time? How did he know the layout of the home, and why did he choose to stab multiple victims and leave a potential witness? The level of violence used suggests this wasn't a random attack. This was personal. He took risks using his own vehicle and leaving the ninth chief. That would implicate him. This suggests he was in an adrenaline-fueled state during the attacks, causing him to make mistakes. Like most people, the members of the household were all active on social media. Could they have unknowingly given Kohberger the information he needed to commit his crime?
Guys, smells like dirty dick in here. Murphy, you've been a bad boy. Oh my god, it's 9:10. Guys, can anybody drop me to class? I'm fucking late for my meeting. I'm supposed to be there 10 minutes ago.
Did anybody do their chores today? Fuck, I'm just gonna do it.
Oh, shit, you guys. It's 8. Gotta go. Jake's calling. Oh, Jake's calling.
Oh my god, I look horrid.
Get out of here. You seriously gotta get out of here. You're fucking stinking this shit out. Hey guys, I know I talk about myself a lot, but like, what would you guys do in my situation?
Xana, where are you going?
Yeah, I gotta go to the pool. Yeah, I failed 2 of them already. Does anyone do like a wine night? Like, let's just do a wine night.
Yo, is it okay if I have a party? Like just 3 or 4 people at most.
A previous rental listing for the Moscow home gives details of floor plans. The group had released several images and TikTok videos that feature the house and its structure. The images of the students enjoying themselves may have been the invitation Kohberger needed to create a desire or disdain. The fact his cell phone pinged at the location 12 times prior could indicate he was stalking the home. This means there is a yet unknown connection to the victims. There were no signs of sexual assault and no signs of theft. If Kohberger was watching the home, but not initiating any attempts to make contact, then his motive was different to that of most stalker types, who tend to gain satisfaction from directly terrorising their victims. Kohberger fits the profile of what is known as the predatory stalker. This is one of the rarest types of stalkers and the deadliest. The predatory stalker tends to have no known connections to their victims. Instead, they have chosen their prey and choose to fixate upon them. The most famous predatory stalker was Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. He would choose his victim and carefully track their movements over time before exacting the right moment to murder them. Although his motive was completely different to that of Kohberger, they share the ultimate goal to kill their victims. The predatory stalker is usually sexually motivated, but this isn't straightforward, as the act of murder itself can be a form of sexual gratification to the offender. The most common used murder weapon is a knife, which most likely fits with the sexually charged nature of the crime. As stabbing the victim involves close contact, the offender is thrilled by the power and control they exact. Because the predatory stalker doesn't attempt to make direct contact with the attending victim, they prefer to watch their victims, usually over a period of 4 to 6 months. They are the hardest to detect. As Kohberger is presumed innocent, this pattern of stalking may be hard to prove in court. With the murder weapon yet to be found and Kohberger's DNA found at the scene, Moscow prosecutors need to work hard to build a solid case against him. Kohberger has an advantage. Having studied criminal justice, he's aware of the methods associated with apprehending a suspect. He'd applied for an internship at Washington State Police Department with an interest in helping rural police forces collect data and analyse data in public safety operations, which does suggest this guy has enough knowledge of digital forensics to cover his tracks. The search of his apartment provided detectives with some interesting evidence: multiple hair samples, blood traces, a black nitrile glove and a fired CV stick. It's yet unclear if any of the items have created a direct link to the victims. An animal hair found could belong to Kaylee's dog. Shopping receipts do not show what he purchased. Whilst his DNA was indeed found on the sheath of the murder weapon, this isn't the definitive proof as it may appear. The defence could argue that he sold the weapon or inadvertently handled it at another point in time. The cell phone pings also do not provide absolute confirmation he was stalking the home. Cell tower data only provides a radius of a phone being near the student house, and his defence could argue this as it's common for WS students to commute to and from the popular town of Moscow. Kohberger had a routine medical 4 days following the murders. Did the medical show any indication of injury, such as scratches? Well, with Kohberger studying a PhD, it shows he has a decent level of education and mental function, and was seen leaving the area of the crime, so any attempt of incapacity of mental function cannot be accepted as a defence. The case is going to rely heavily on providing direct evidence of Kohberger's involvement with the horrific crime. With a court order currently in place banning anyone in authority discussing this case, how much evidence prosecutors have is unknown. However, Moscow police did collect over 103 pieces of evidence just from the crime scene. Brian Kohberger's motive may never be fully known or understood, although he has succeeded in gaining enough notoriety that he will be studied in the very classes he once attended. Whilst the families of the victims can find some solace in knowing that a suspect is in custody, Kohberger's violent attack will forever haunt the small town of Moscow.